I'm so pleased to be able to meet you in person. Thank you for coming on and for telling your story today. How are you? How is everything in your world?
Really good. Yeah, really good. I'm doing so well, and I hope you're doing well too.
Thank you for asking. I'm doing great. Taylor Clement. Who is Taylor Clement?
Oh my gosh, could you start with a bigger question? Who is Taylor Clement? I would say she's, first of all, a daughter and a sister and a friend. She is driven and ambitious. Hasn't always been, loves a challenge. She is an ex-athlete and now still finds herself in the sporting world, coincidentally. But she's just someone who has gone through a lot and wants to change the world in whatever way she can. So that's who Taylor is in a nutshell. We could be here for an hour talking.
We will be here for an hour talking because we've got so much to talk to you about.
Just a little warning as well, I might cry.
We have tissues because I might as well.
I'm like a crier. I'm such a crier.
It's
People
okay.
are like, you're so weird. I'm like, it's just emotion, okay?
Exactly. Everyone's got them. Well, some people don't have feelings, but we do. That's fine. You were so many things, and I want to break them all down. Let's start off with Taylor, the athlete.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your journey in sport, where it began, and swimming. Swimming was your first love, right?
Yeah, swimming definitely started it all off for me. I think in a time where I didn't really have a lot in terms of friendships, and bearing in mind I was super young. I was, I guess, like 10 or 11 when I first got into swimming competitively, and it gave me a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose in my life, and I guess to an extent my whole identity was swimming for like a good 10 years of my life, which I'm super grateful for that I had that, because I don't think if I hadn't had swimming, I don't think I would be in the position that I am today with the strength and, determination. But yeah, I started swimming when I was 10 and 11. I was born with a rare syndrome called Mobius syndrome, which affects my 6th and 7th cranial nerves, which means my eyebrows don't move, my eyes don't track from left to right, and my upper lip doesn't move, which means I can't smile, but I can. This is my smile. And because of this syndrome, most people with the syndrome are born with an outer extremity deformity, and mine was bilateral talipes or clubbed feet, which means I have little to no ankle movement and no calf muscle. So that is what enabled me to be a Paralympic athlete, or classified as a Paralympic athlete, sorry. And I got into the Paralympic program quite early, from around 12 or 13, and was sort of in that program right up until about 19, 20. I competed for New Zealand at numerous international events. The Pan Pacific Championships in 2014 over in Los Angeles was the biggest pinnacle event for me in my international career, and it's sort of weird to say that when you're like a 15, 16-year-old and you consider like being a swimmer as your career, but that's just what it was for me at the time. And in 2000 and, gosh, what year was it? I want to say 2019 was when I had to step away from swimming. I think if I was given somewhat of a choice, I would have stayed, but I had to stop due to my mental health. And I was in and out of hospital, and with swimming, you're training in the pool twice a day, and you've got gym in between that. And it just wasn't feasible for me to keep going and competing at the level that I would have liked to compete at. So stepped away from swimming, and that was kind of my swimming career over and done with.
I'm sure there were so many highs throughout. What did they feel like to you?
Oh, at the time, like I said earlier, swimming was my identity because I really did not have anything else. I was bullied all throughout my schooling life pretty dramatically, and swimming was like my safe space. You can't hear anything when you're under the water, so it was really nice and quiet, and I really valued that. I also really enjoyed competing, and I guess when you're at the top of a sport that you've trained pretty much your whole memorable life for, it feels amazing. But looking back on it, I definitely wasn't happy at all. And I think that's something that I always want to talk about, especially with athletes as well, because I think when you're in the moment, it can feel so good to be winning, but as soon as the shoe's on the other foot, you have nothing to fall back on when you're, so used to winning. So I think it's just, it was a really big wake-up call for me to look back and think, and like see myself actually not being happy, and the only reason I was happy was because I was doing so well.
When did you realise that maybe things aren't right? I'm not happy, it's not producing the joy that you should be feeling?
I think definitely after, in the 6 months prior to me completely pulling out of swimming, I really wasn't doing well. I was in and out of hospital. I was having seizures and collapsing. That was all due to my mental health issues. Like, it was really, really bad. And I think in those 6 months prior, I just lost all the love and joy and happiness that came from swimming, and being able to be on poolside and training 2 hours a day, which might sound crazy to some people, but training 2 hours a day and then going back in the afternoon and training 2 hours again, like, made me so happy, and it gave me like fulfillment. So definitely in those 6 months prior, I started realising that I really wasn't happy, and then when I completely took a step back from swimming, I realised I had a lot of work to do mentally, and it was definitely a long battle in like the shortest way possible.
Let's expand on that then, the battle.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy,
No.
It was a long journey. What did you do? What are the sorts of things that you did to bring that happiness back, that beautiful smile?
Yeah. I would say, I won't sugarcoat it, it was like the least bit easy of like a journey ever. I was in and out of hospital, like I said, for like probably a good year. I didn't finish high school. I was made to leave school due to being in and out of hospital so much. And I think when you also have that taken away from you, as well as that athlete part of you, so you've got, you know, your school identity and then like that sport identity, I really had nothing left. And being in hospital kind of didn't make it any better, because like being in a hospital can be quite a dark place sometimes. And I was finally diagnosed with extreme clinical depression, anxiety with post-traumatic stress disorder, and was put straight into like intensive therapy with a psychologist and a psychotherapist. And the first year I was in intensive therapy was kind of a waste of time for me, because I wasn't willing to own up to the fact that I really was struggling. But one day my therapist sat down and we were about to start, and she said, "Taylor, I know you've been lying to me." And I just broke down. I was like, "No, I'm not." But definitely from that point on, I took it seriously. And I think the fear of opening up and going back through everything that you've gone through, and like bringing up all those feelings and wounds and having to deal with everything, and having to realise that, because for so long I thought it was my fault, and I thought that and I know I shouldn't have, but when you grow up being bullied and you don't really know anything different, you think in some sort of weird, twisted way that you deserve it and that you are meant to be in that position. And I think realising that going through therapy was probably one of the hardest things for me, because then you go through like that position of like, oh, well, why me? Like, why has it happened to me? Why did I have to be born the way that I was? Why did I have to go through everything? But like being born the way that I am is like the greatest thing that could have ever happened for me, and I'm like so grateful for that.
Oh, we can stop for a second
No,
if you
fine.
need.
I always cry.
Do you want some tissues?
Thank you. Oopsies.
Yeah, it's really hard to
Thanks.
pull these ones out. I'm just going to leave those there.
Thanks.
And you just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
You are so brave. I know you're so open to talking about
I
this.
know that I cry. It's not like that I'm sad about talking about it. It's just like a reaction that I...
Yeah, it's a lot. It's
Half
a lot.
the time I don't even want to cry. I'm like, why am I crying?
It's okay. We can take our time, you know. You just let me know when you're good to go again.
I'll just put that. Okay.
That is such a beautiful thing to hear after the trauma and the battle and the struggle that you went through. There's a few things that I want to go back and touch on.
Yeah, for sure.
The first one is when you were 12 years old and you had surgery.
Yeah.
You've been open and you've talked about this before. Can you tell us about that? What you did, what and why?
Yeah. My God, cue
And
the
the
tears
after
again.
effects. Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, so I had a pretty invasive and major operation when I was 12. It was called the smile surgery, and I'm sure there's some like proper like medical term for it, but I wouldn't have no idea what it's called. But yeah, essentially because I was born without a smile, and I had been bullied like when I say I'd been bullied my whole life, like being bullied is all I can ever remember from school up until that age. And so when I was 12, I was presented with the opportunity to be able to have a smile or potentially have a smile. And of course, when you're a 12-year-old kid, and especially a 12-year-old girl, and there's so much like emphasis put on how you look and your external image, I jumped at the opportunity. I thought that me having a normal smile would fix all my problems and cure everything that I was going through. And of course, like when you're sitting across from the surgeon and they're saying that, you know, there's a good chance that like it will be successful, but you know, there's also been cases where it hasn't been successful. You don't hear the latter. You just, you know, you're a 12-year-old girl and all you want to do is to be able to smile so that you can like have friends and not be bullied and like go to school and like have fun like you see in like the movies or like you see other people doing. So yeah, I jumped at the opportunity. The surgery was 8 hours long. They took tissue from my right thigh and inserted it internally from the corners of my mouth up into my temples. And the idea was that when I'd clench down, the tissue that was connecting the corners of my mouth to my temples would bring the corners of my mouth up so that I would be able to smile. And there was like a really fine line between tightening the tissue too much and tightening it not enough. And obviously the surgery was unsuccessful, and at the time like it completely broke me. I thought this before the surgery, like I was 12 and I didn't really understand mental health and all that sort of stuff. So I knew that I wasn't like the happiest I could be, but after that surgery, it sent me down like a super, super dark hole, I guess, and was in that like dark tunnel for a good number of years. And I went back to school with like my face swollen out to here with bruises everywhere, and like my lips were like massive because of the bruising and everything. And it's kind of not funny, but it's funny to look back on now, because one of the main groups of people that would bully me would be like the rugby team, which is kind of weird because now, you know, I'm kind of in the rugby space and kind of closer to the rugby team than they'll ever be, so there's that.
I love that. We don't even want to give them time and space and energy, to be honest, but that's a good response.
There's my little sassiness coming out. But no, I think, you know, going back to school, already being different, kids already knowing you're different, already being bullied, and then going back to school looking like pretty much like a bruised puffer fish wasn't easy at all. And it made things 10 times worse, and I had to start a new school looking like that. So it really just was a recipe for disaster, and like really led into some of like the darkest years, both for myself, but also externally from other people as well.
You talked about the hard times going through therapy, and all the help that you were able to get, and finding the love back for yourself again, and realizing that actually this is such a beautiful thing. You then went back into sport. How did you find your love for sport again? And can you tell us about your next journey, your next steps in athletics?
Yeah. I think when I stopped swimming, I think I always knew in the back of my head that maybe potentially I might get back into sport. I don't think it, as much as I would have liked it to be swimming, I don't think it was ever going to be swimming, and I wasn't really looking for the opportunity. The opportunity kind of just showed up on my doorstep, and I was called up by someone at Para Athletics Auckland, and they were like, you know, we've heard a little bit about your story and would like love to see if you'd like to give athletics a go. And I was like, yeah, sure, but I won't be doing any running. So
you knew your strengths.
I was like, won't be running anywhere, probably not power walking either. I'm a very slow walker, so don't put me on the track. Because you won't get any medals through me in that respect. But they was like, well, do you want to give a shot, put a go? So I was like, sure. So I turn up to the athletics field up at the Millennium Institute on the North Shore, and they just handed me the shot put, and they were like, just throw it. And I was like, well, I've got no idea what I'm doing, firstly. And they were like, just do it like you did in school. So I didn't even do like a circle thing. I didn't even do like a step back. I literally just stood right where like the wooden thing is at the back of the circle and just like threw it. And they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, hey, do it again. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, sure. So I did it again, and then he called a couple of the other athletics ninjas over from the head office, and I was like, well, I didn't really know I was going to be having like an audience. So I threw it again and they measured it, and I had actually thrown over the New Zealand record in my classification. And so from then on, it was not really a question. It was just like I was going to do it, which I didn't mind. Like, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't want to, but I think that gave me a lot of confidence. I think when you start something when you're older, it can be kind of daunting and scary. So, and I definitely felt that. And I was still in intensive therapy, bearing in mind I wasn't anywhere near done with my therapy journey. And I competed. No, I don't even think I competed once before heading over to Australia with the national team. And so I'd been in the sport for like 3 months, and they're like, well, we've got to get you classified and you can compete for the first time over at the New South Wales Championships. And I was like, oh, okay, like, could I have done like an area competition first? Like, not going to like face the Australians? Like, come on. And bearing in mind, I was like still riddled with anxiety. I had to go over by myself, didn't have mum or dad with me, and I was like, this is not going to go well at all. I'm going to embarrass the whole country. I'm going to embarrass myself. But anyway, ended up going over there, got classified and competed in the competition, and ended up making the finals and then getting second on the podium, and then also throwing a distance that got me world number 1 at my first competition, which
Incredible. Like, you
don't ask me how I did it. People always ask me, I'm like, I've got no clue.
I'm not going to ask that at all, but you are seriously a phenomenal person and a phenomenal athlete. You got to the top. Mm-hmm. You had set a world record. People talk about the highs when you get there, but for you, you didn't feel those same highs, did you?
No. I think it's funny you say that, because when I was in swimming, I had made this like vision board, and I put it like on my bed, and it was everything to do with swimming, obviously, because that's what I was doing. I didn't know I was going to get into athletics, and I had made this vision board, and I had put up there that I wanted to be a world record holder. I wanted to be world number 1. I wanted to do this and this. I wanted to go to the Paralympics and all that stuff, because I thought that's what was deemed as successful and was deemed as like, you'd be happy once you had that. And, coming out of swimming, I'd sort of lost hope for that dream. And then when I got into athletics, it sort of all just happened. So I didn't really have any time to think about it. But like you said, when I broke the world record and was world number 1, it wasn't anything that I had hyped it up to be, or that anyone had like hyped it up to be at all. Not because I wasn't happy, but I think because I had found so much happiness and confidence outside of sport that I realised that, and this might sound so conceited, but that being a world record holder and world number 1 really was just like a materialistic thing that was next to your name. Like, I know it's amazing, and I don't want to take away from anyone else's achievements, because I have so much respect for athletes and what they put themselves through, and like I understand like how hard it can be, but how do I put this in a nice way?
Well, for you personally, it was different, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was just another competition for me, and when you look at it next to your name, you're just like, oh, it's just what it is. It didn't really mean too much to me, and maybe that's because I hadn't grown up in athletics. I'd only been in the sport for 2 or so years, and I didn't really spend much time in the sport. But I think at that point, and like other things were happening as well within like my training environment and everything, and I think I just realised that I didn't want to be an athlete anymore, and like that was okay. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about that next journey then.
Yeah.
Because being an athlete was just, it was a long period of your life, but it's a small period of your life, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about who you are actually away from the swimming pool, away from the field in athletics. What did you do next? When did you decide to start sharing your journey, your story, and what you're doing on social media?
Yeah. Well, again, I sort of just fell into it. I was feeling really, I guess, open one day, and I was like, I'm just going to share like a tiny little bit of what's going on in my life right now and like where I've been. And I didn't really have too many followers at that point, and I was like, I'm just going to do it just for like fun. I didn't really think anything of it, and I just posted a picture, like a comparison picture of me right after my surgery and then where I was at now. I think it was like me like doing some sort of like physical activity or something, and I just like wrote a little caption. I was like, this is, where I've been and what I'm doing, and the response I got was like insane. I did not expect it. Like the amount of notifications that would come. I think my phone even like turned off at one point because it was like, okay, we can't handle this. So I learned very quickly to turn the notifications off because my phone was overheating, and I was just like, wow, okay, people like reacted so well to that, so maybe I should just keep going. And I think a few months after that, I was contacted by someone from the Crusaders to come down and share my story in front of a room full of like fully grown men, which I should have been like, no, thank you, that's a no from me. Bearing in mind, I was still in therapy at this point. People don't realise that like I was still like right in the thick of like my mental health journey and really still trying to figure stuff out for myself, and going down there. When I told you, I was so scared. Like when you've got a room full of, and bearing in mind, I'd only just turned 20, I think. So when you're in front of a room full of fully grown men, like 30 or 40 of them, and you're standing up there and all you can think of is, I'm about to pass out, or I don't know what I'm saying. But again, the response that I got from them was insane. Like I just did not, I don't even think I did a good job. I was standing there and I was like, what am I even talking about at this point? But the response I got from them was amazing. I got to train with them. Like it was like in the pre-season, so I got to do a beach training session with them, and that was really cool. And then I came back to Auckland and did a few things with North Harbour Rugby, which was really cool. And that's sort of, I guess, what started my journey in wanting to talk about my story more, not necessarily being in rugby, but I really wanted to share my story more. So I did more of that on social media, and then signed with an international modelling agency beginning of last year. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. I thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, yep, this is what I'm doing now. And then fast forward to the start of this year. It's not that I wasn't feeling fulfilled in modelling at all. Like I really enjoyed it, but I just thought I could be doing something more. And just randomly one day had the idea to do a recap of the first Super Rugby weekend, all the way back in round one. And don't even ask me what's happened since then, because I couldn't even tell you. It's been like the biggest whirlwind ever. Like getting to work with teams like the Chiefs has been really cool. The Blues next week. But yeah, I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities that I've been given, and I don't know where I got my confidence from, but we're here, and so that's what I'm doing now, and it's like so fulfilling. And to be able, there's also like not a lot of inclusion really in New Zealand as a whole, but when you look at rugby specifically, and when you look at rugby on a global stage, I think there's not a lot of inclusion, if any. So to be the first person doing that is like scary on one hand, but also so exciting because I know how much I can do and the ability that I have to really change the game.
I want to go back to that point you just made there, and to a social media post that you've put up. Your why has always remained the same for that little girl pictured on the left, that 11-year-old girl who was bullied, excluded, isolated, underrepresented, and not represented at all. Tell us more about that.
Oh. Yeah. That little girl like really struggled. She had no one. Yeah, there's really nothing else to say other than she had no one to look up to, no one on the cover of magazines, no one in the movies, no one on TV shows. And I don't want to come across as if I'm being like, oh, this should have been done, or this is the way that it should be, or like porn there, because I don't think that way at all. I don't want sympathy. But my biggest driving like factor is not only my like younger self, but also all the other people out there who potentially going through something similar to what I went through, or even just feeling like they're not represented or seen or heard in society and culture. And I think to be doing that in rugby, like I said earlier, like rugby boys were like one of the main kind of groups of people that used to bully me, so to now be like living their dreams pretty funny. But also like take all of that out of it. And I think just my passion for rugby, you know, I've grown up watching rugby with my dad and for years now, and I think to be in that space, and I just know that I really have the ability to change the sport, and I have the ability to represent for people who aren't being, like, to put it quite plainly and simply, aren't being represented right now. And to hopefully do that not only in New Zealand but on a global scale is like, I just know that it's what I'm supposed to be doing, and I have such a passion for it. So yeah, I'm doing it all for that little girl, I think.
It's a powerful thing. You have a lot of power across social media and in yourself. People can be mean. Mm-hmm. You've mentioned the bullies.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that on social media? Because I have seen comments that you've picked up and you've pulled out, and they're not nice comments.
No.
How do you deal with that so strongly?
I think I'm probably the wrong person to ask that to when it comes to comments on social media. But I think after going through everything I went through in school and going through therapy before getting onto social media, I think that has really helped me because it made me realise that I'm not what they say about me. It's more so a reflection of them than it is on me, and I know that's what everyone says, and I know it sounds so cheesy and cliched, but at the end of the day, hurt people, and I know what I'm doing, and I know the power and the ability I have to help others, so I think the confidence I have in that far outweighs any negative comment that I could get online. And people aren't very creative online either. They just sort of say the same thing, and I'm just like, if you're going to say something, at least make it like creative or funny or something, because I just look at these comments and I'm like, this is like so boring to look at. But
is there anything that stands out to you?
Well, do you know what's so funny? And I never got this on like my other like TikTok or Instagram, but when it came, like when I started doing rugby, not a lot, but some people were calling me floppy face, and I'm like, that literally makes no sense because I literally have a syndrome that pretty much means I have free Botox. So I just don't get it. Like people don't think before they say things. I'm like, at least just like brainstorm a few things before saying it. But no, like at the end of the day, I know what I'm doing. I know what I want to do. I know the path that I want to go down, and it's just like people just sitting at home behind a screen. I'm just like, get a life, really.
I love it. I love it. Everyone needs the kind of confidence and the strength that you have. How did you get that? Are there any tips? Are there any pointers? I know it's a long journey. It's not an easy fix that happens overnight, but are there some things that people sitting here could go, oh, maybe I can do that, I could try that, that you can share? Yeah,
it's probably not going to be the answer people want to hear, but I know when I was younger, I wanted to be anything but myself. Like I hated myself and despised myself so much, not because necessarily I thought that, but I think more so because all I had known was people telling me that from a really young age, like people telling me I was ugly or worthless, or that my parents didn't love me, or that I was a mistake, or that I was contagious for some odd reason. I don't know why they would say that. But just all of this stuff, and you know, I believed it because I was so young and so vulnerable and so impressionable, and so for a long time I just really thought that I was all those things, and people would say that I wasn't going to go anywhere, and I believed it because that's what people told me. And again, it wasn't until I was in therapy and kind of doing my own thing, then coming out of therapy and being like, okay, well, what do I want to do with my life? Who is Taylor, you know? And I think I just came to the realization that I was born the way I am for a reason. Everyone is born different. There is no one in this world that is exactly like you, and I think that is what is so special about being alive and like having the gift of life, which kind of sounds so deep, but you know, the syndrome that I have is 1 in 4 million, so the chances that I got it are like literally like 1 in 4 million. So I'm not only 1 in a million, I'm 1 in 4 million, but it's just like, why would I want to be anyone else when I was born the way I was? Like everything, I believe everything happens for a reason, and we are born the way we are for a reason, and I know that me going through everything that I did and being born the way that I was meant to happen to me so that I could be the vessel to inspire others. And obviously that's not going to be the same kind of journey for everyone, but I think if you just really take the time to realise that there's only one of you in this world, then I think it's a pretty good like base to start getting your confidence back.
I want to hear that smile again. I know you say you're the girl without the smile. It may not be there physically, but I can feel it. Other people feel it. What is it that fills you up, that brings so much happiness? You know, that girl that I heard on the phone. What is it that makes you happiest?
I think just being alive, really, like getting to experience life. I think there was a long time, pretty much, I mean, I'm 25, and for most of my life, up until about 20, I was like so deeply and morbidly depressed. You know, I didn't really feel happy. I had really no one. I thought no one liked me. I thought no one wanted me to be here. I didn't want to be here myself. I tried many times to not be here, and I think I said to myself at the start of my journey of like rehab and getting better, I made a promise to myself, and I was like, if I was ever gonna fully recover and like fully get to a place where I could feel happy again, that's all I would need in life to like succeed and do well. And so I think I've like really proven to myself that not only can I get back to where I was, but I'm even greater than what I thought I was gonna be, and that's really what makes me happy.
Taylor, I could keep talking to you forever. Honestly, you're so strong, you're so powerful, you're so inspiring. Like, it's crazy, and I hope you do know this about yourself as well.
Thanks.
I know there were a few things that you wanted to talk about. Have we touched on everything? Is there anything else that you want to put out there that you want people to hear?
No, I'm happy with whatever you guys want to do.
Are you proud of yourself?
Yeah.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you see yourself going in this life? 25 years, you've done incredible things already. You're doing amazing things right now. Where will Taylor end up?
I can't say for sure, obviously, because we never know, but I think, like I said, I don't think I went through everything I did for no reason, and I think I've found myself in the world of rugby, and it's a crazy world, and I'm only really just getting started, but I really see myself going really far in it, and you know, it's really hard being the only one doing something and like doing something new and not knowing how it's going to be received. But I think if the first 10 or so rounds of Super Rugby can speak to anything, it's that there is a want and need for people like myself in rugby globally. And this might be a fast stretch, but I was saying to my dad the other day, I was like, I can really see myself on the board of World Rugby and just showing people who's boss and showing that like a girl who can't smile can like, you know, do it, because there's no one like that, even at the highest level, let alone the lowest level. So while I might not be there yet, I am only 25 after all, I think I can really make a change in the sport and hopefully other sports as well, and just really show people that no matter what, like no matter what you're born with, no matter what you go through in life, no matter what your current circumstances, that you can really be, do and achieve whatever it is and whatever it is that you want to do in this life, and that you're here for a reason, and that you are who you are for a reason.
Thank you so much, Taylor. You are here for a reason. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to come and give you a hug. Not because you need it, because I need it. You're honestly just an amazing person. Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this.